Hi friends, today we're working on a running animation.
So a friend I met at 2DCon in Minneapolis last year, Ryan, asked me to help spruce up an old project of his, so I thought I'd see what I could come up with. The game is called Berry Banquet, and it's a friendly game about bears competing to eat berries that was made for a jam. Here's the drawing I did for the first character, and today I'm going to make a sideways running animation for it. I used the image editor in GameMaker Studio to do all my pixel art and animating, which surprises some, but there's a lot of little tricks and options that make animation and effects really easy in GameMaker. So anytime I animate, I usually don't reinvent the wheel. I get on Google and will search for example sprites. So I type in running sprite, and as you can see, there are plenty of images to choose from. I actually like this one right here a lot. You can see that it has 8 frames. When it comes to running, I prefer 8 frames, which might be more than most retro games would use, but it makes for a smooth animation that I think communicates the motion better. So I'll glance at a sprite sheet like this on my phone to use as a reference while I'm drawing. Obviously, plagiarism and copying pixel for pixel is not good, so don't do that. So to start off, I'm going to add 7 more frames. And what I like about GameMaker Editor is that when you select and copy an image, you get a brush or a stamp of that selection. So I'm going to select the bear's head, and I'm going to paste it into all of the frames. The head I know is going to stay more or less the same throughout the animation, opposed to the rest of the body. And I want his head to bob up and down as he runs. So I'm going to turn onion skinning on, and I'm going to start with the first 2 frames as him up in the air, and then in frame 3 and 4 he'll be stepping on the ground. In frames 5 and 6, he'll be stepping up in the air with the alternating leg, and coming down on that leg in frames 7 and 8. If I press play, I get a very excited head bob. Let's slow that down because the default setting in GameMaker is 60 frames per second. I usually animate at about 10 to 12 frames per second. Another thing I like about GameMaker is that I can easily change the speed of frames per second of the animation for each individual sprite. That comes in handy a lot, because even if I think an animation looks like it's the right speed in the editor, it might not look right when it's viewed in the game. Sometimes we adjust the animation speed to match the mechanics, and sometimes we adjust the mechanics to match the animation speed. Usually it's a little of both. So now it's time to draw, and I'm just going to dive in. I've learned when I'm animating that it's best to just start off really sloppy. I'm using a mouse to draw pixel art, and although I'm pretty good at drawing with a pencil, none of that translates when using the mouse freehand. So I just have to accept that it's going to look bad. But the motion in the animation is the important part for now. If I can convey the motion with sloppy art, and it looks good, I'll start the refinement process. But I don't want to put detail into a drawing and find that the motion doesn't look right, and I'll have to change all of them. I use the line tool a lot for doing these rough drawings, but this character is very round, so the paintbrush should be good. So now if I play the animation, we can see that it looks good. It needs a lot of refining, but the motion is there. The bear looks like it's running. Next thing I'm going to do is just fill in some color quick. I'm going to make the far arm and leg a darker shade, so it's easier for our eyes to follow the action. Now I'm going to start what I call cleaning up my lines. I've tried to go for different styles of pixel art with the different games I've made, and some tutorials will tell you to avoid black outlining, but I tend to do black outlines a lot, and I like the look, so I guess that's my style and preference. The greatest thing about pixel art is seeing the variety of style with different artists, and the fact that people are still pushing this medium further all the time and reinventing different ways to express their individual styles. So when I clean up my lines, I'm just following a common practice of making sure that the pixels are either in a single file line or adjacent when diagonal and not touching each other. You'll see that I use the selection tool a lot, both for making stamps and also for moving limbs around. It's hard to draw anything perfectly proportionate. So I look over my art, and if something looks a little off, I'll try moving the limbs into different positions, and sometimes that fixes it. And now that my lines are pretty clean, I'll move on to the shading. And to be honest, I struggle with shading and understanding some of the fundamental ideas of lighting, but I do my best to guess how an object might look with top lighting. There are a lot of artists on YouTube that understand these concepts much better than me. I started doing pixel art a couple years ago, so I am still learning all the time. You'll see me going through the frames and trying to add continuity, and this gets tricky sometimes. If this drawing was any more detailed or larger, I would probably separate some of the parts of the character on different layers in order to do easier overlaps. But the drawback that I've found with layers is that my lack of attentiveness usually results in me drawing on the wrong layer all the time. And then my attempt to reorganize might create what I call rogue pixels spread out through the animation in different frames. And this all becomes very messy. So now I've gone back to one layer drawing when I can get away with it. Another thing I've learned with continuity is that there's a time and place for shifting part of a drawing around rather than redrawing it, in order to help our eyes follow the action. But there are also times when it will be best to redraw, and that's just something that requires trial and error usually. So something this animation is lacking still is weight, which can also be referred to as jiggle physics in some situations. And this is the idea that the fattier parts of our body and our hair or clothing sometimes move differently and out of sync with the more rigid parts. Basically, the muscles are moving and the excess is just along for the ride. And usually the easiest way to show this is with a simple delay. So where the muscles go in one frame, the rest follows the frame after. And if you have multiple areas like this, it usually looks good to stagger the delays. So one area has a 1-frame delay, where another area might take 2 frames. Now, I was originally going to put all the weight in the belly of this character. And I may still do that, but I decided to switch gears and use the bear's ears to show some weight off. So they stay up in the air even as the rest of the bear is coming down. The eyes are something I keep playing with, and I tried to see what it'd look like if I changed them or put some difference of expression in some frames, but I didn't like it. I did, however, decide to move his mouth to imply that he is breathing heavily while running, and it looks decent. There's one more thing I want to do now, and one more GMS editor tip I want to show you. Now that I have a brown bear animation, I also need a polar bear animation, and I can do that with a snap of a finger. I just duplicate this sprite, pull up the new one, select all of these frames, and then use the color changing tool. Bing, bang, boom. And we're done. For me, this animation still isn't finished, and it's far from perfect, which is why when I make games, I prefer to share a project in GameMaker with my programmer via Dropbox. That way, anytime he isn't in the project, I can jump in, touch up the sprites, which are directly linked to the objects they are designated to in the game. And I can save, and the next time my programmer jumps in, the refined art is already in and ready to be observed. There's no exporting, no importing, no reloading of projects, and no need to go through your whole catalog of sprites to update every single one. And that saves us a lot of time. And there you have it, a bear who appears to be running like a human. Anyway, I tried to put some useful information in this video, so hopefully if you're watching, you maybe learned something. And if you did and you want me to make more videos like this on animation, please let me know. I'm working on a lot of games right now, and I'll try to have more of an update on those soon. Thanks for watching. Take care, friends.